Hey guys, this is episode 9 of FTC Files. Today we have Steelhead Robotics from Oregon. So, Ben, can you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. My name's Ben. I am the programming lead, and I also do a lot of the design and outreach on Steelhead.
And my name's Cam. I'm the design lead for Steelhead, and then I also do outreach and help with programming occasionally.
Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know, Steelhead is a really strong team from Oregon. Last year they were really cool inverse stackers, so kind of off the meta, but still worked out great. And they were consistently getting 8 or 9 stones high, and they had an awesome season last year from what I could tell. So it's great to have you guys. So I guess starting things off, how's your season this year? How did it go last year? Kind of what was happening, and how's COVID impacted you, if anything at all?
I can take this one. Our season this year has been obviously a little slower than last season since Oregon's had some pretty serious restrictions, so
Hmm.
we've had to kind of change how we meet. Um, and we've also been trying to train new team members this year because everyone from Steelhead last year is a senior.
Oh wow.
So it's been a unique challenge. But I think we're doing all right. There's a lot more CAD, less in-person building, and so we just have it set up at my house right now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and it's our county especially has been very heavily impacted by COVID. I think we have the highest cases in Oregon,
Oh.
uh, and so we
Got it.
have to limit ourselves to no more than two households grouping. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's
Yeah, and
definitely been tough, but
it's really
we're making
tough
through.
to mentor new people when like you can't like connect with them physically,
Yeah.
and like you have to just say, "Oh, we need you to do this CAD," except you need to just be in voice call with each other.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure how we're gonna teach them everything they need to know before we leave. Hopefully, we get back in person because we did secure a cool meeting space which has enough
Wow.
room for like a half field.
Hmm.
So
That's lit.
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll hopefully be heading back there once the restrictions are lifted soon.
Yeah,
yeah,
hopefully, like the vaccinations and all the new stuff that's gonna be happening, hopefully it would take care of some of that, so you guys can get back up to speed. But
yeah.
yeah, all right. So let's jump right in. I know you guys have a lot to share. So I guess the first main question, judging by like your design last year, it was super unique and innovative. So going off of that, what is your design process like for a given season, and kind of how are you documenting this? So do you have anything unique you would like to share for that?
I'll take the first half of that. So I think that one of the very big focuses of our design process that I feel like is a bit different than the like what most teams do is we spend a lot of time focusing on getting like our strategy developed
Hmm.
because it's a lot easier for us to spend like 2 or 3 weeks at the beginning of the season. Like a lot of teams will spend that time just grinding CAD, which we do a little bit of CAD then, but we're mostly thinking about like what path exactly do we want to go down. And for last season especially, that led to us coming up with the idea for doing inverse stacking. Whereas if we just sort of rushed into it, we probably would have gone with a fine robot, but it would have been down the very like the obvious path.
Yeah.
And I think we had a lot more fun last season because we did a unique design and because it had its own challenges involved with it.
I think I
Yeah,
think
we go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say this year we actually like I'm just going back to like when October and November was for the ultimate goal. Like we saw your inverse stacking video in the off season, obviously, and like because Corona, we were just looking at what other teams were doing, and then like the new season hit, and we're just like we don't want to do like obviously meta is good, but we just don't want to do just the meta this season. So like this year, I would say our robot is fairly unique in terms of like what we're trying to go for. So that inspiration actually came from you guys from the inverse stacking, which I thought was super cool. So that's why I'm really excited for the interview. But um, yeah, I mean, I think your team also shows that off meta bots or unique and innovative bots can do exceptionally well or even better at times. So
Yeah. I mean, I think that part of it is a lot of it is just very fun to come up with your own designs,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be also very fun to work with other teams. But going off the
Yeah,
beaten path is it's also just a better way to learn and get better.
for sure.
As far as in my own experience, at least. Yeah,
Yeah, the Diffie swerve is pretty cool.
It's like
yeah,
even if your game strategy itself is not the most unique, I think it's like really cool and fun to like try and come up with unique
Mm.
ideas for at least like a mechanism or like a subsystem. So like
yeah.
this year we tried the Diffie. Um, hopefully that, you know, turns out well for us. It's a unique solution to moving around the game field,
Yeah,
and we have some more cool stuff like that.
Yeah. I also do think this year is a lot, or at least from what we find, it's a lot harder to come up with a very out of the box strategy. Like I don't think we're going to be quite as unique this year as we were last year, just because the game just sort of narrows or lends itself to a very narrow or amount of like ways to build your robot.
I
Yeah.
think
Uh,
I think the uniqueness, and I don't know if I'm just talking from like our team's point, but I think the uniqueness for this season is not so much with the actual mechanism, but what you can do with individual mechanisms. So like how you can adapt a
yeah,
regular intake, or how you can adapt like a shooter to fit your needs,
for sure.
and kind of going with that. I think it's this game focuses a lot on like cycle optimization. How can you get the lowest cycles? I think that's like some of the strategy. It's not really a main strategy, but I think it's really important to think about speed and optimization for that as well. That's kind of the strategy we did for the season, not necessarily how we would score, but definitely, yeah, that's a pretty
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah, like
I think that was
optimizing
one of
for
the things.
speed
Go ahead, Ben.
is one of the biggest things we tried to do last year. So we were like reducing our motors to see like how fast we could make something without it taking up like a
Yeah,
ton of voltage and stuff like that.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
like it's just super important because the whole game is based on like the timer. So the
I think
faster you
yeah.
can do individual things,
I think
the better.
the slowest motor we used on a robot last year was a 13.7 to 1, which was very
Oh
different
my.
because that was sort of our first year coming into our the us being in charge of the team of
Mhm.
Steelhead. Steelhead's been around for a while, but it was sort of our first year where we were doing well on our own. And
That's
part of that was
nice.
just pushing it to see, like in the past, we've always used these the motors that have just been in our robotics classroom, which are 40 to ones and 20 to ones from Andy Marks.
Yeah.
And so we got a lot of I think we gained a lot from trying to like question our base assumptions. So we've always used 40 to 1 for drivetrain, but that's no reason like fives or fours. Well, we're using fours on our Diffie, but that's because they're geared down a lot. But I
Fours. Oh
think
my
still
god.
the actual drive ratio is like 15 to 1
Yeah.
on 4-inch wheels equivalent.
50 to 1, I think is a really good. Like when we were doing stuff at the beginning of the season, we narrowed it from anywhere from like 15.6 to 19.2. Like right now we're running 19.2s on our robot, but it's not the fastest, so definitely looking to lower it if possible. But uh, I think 15 or 16 to 1 is a really good balance between that like XL and the acceleration and just general like drivetrain free speed, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think it also depends a lot on the drivetrain that you use. Like a six wheel is going to have
yeah,
different torque and
yeah,
speed
for
that it can
sure.
handle than Magnum or a Diffie.
Hmm. Okay, cool. Do you guys want to like pull up some documentation and maybe walk us through some of that stuff?
Yeah,
Yeah.
have our notebooks here. We can take a look. Um,
Okay,
so can you guys see this?
I'm gonna switch to it. Here we go. Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So yeah, this is our engineering slash daily entry section. And it's just
Oh my
pretty
god.
fat. We met a lot last year. It was kind of like a really big robotics year for us. So we have all these meetings. And each meeting we have like a task list and a summary,
Hmm.
which I think is important for any good notebook. It just helps keep you organized. And then we just go into detail on everything we did. We try to include as many pictures as possible because um, I think it's more important for the judges to see pictures because like honestly, they're not going to read all this. So the more you can convey with pictures, the better.
Yeah,
And
for
it
sure.
also helps us when we go back and like, oh wait, how did we mount this? And then we have all this detail here. So it's like, okay, I know exactly what we did. We can like fix something if it breaks. And it's just really helpful to have all this documentation, although it is a lot of work.
Yeah. So that's the daily entry section of our notebook, and we actually have other places where we do engineering documentation. So that's we try and keep up with those like daily entries. It's very important for us to try and get them done as soon as possible after the entry, because otherwise you just start losing information. And we're very lucky to have a team member who is very good at keeping up to date on those.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
actually,
And then
no, go ahead.
and then we also have some other sections. So programming has its own section, and then CAD has its own section. And the CAD notebook is always changing and evolving. This is last year's, and we basically go over every single version of parts that we make. This notebook is unfortunately not completed because of this early termination of the season, but because this is the section of notebook that I'm responsible for, and it gets finished a lot later than the engineering section. But but we've changed it this year to be a bit more like a bit of a narrative than a just like series of snapshots. So I've been trying to explain my design decisions more than just showing them, and I think that that's really important. And First has like a 17-page PDF you can read if you just like, Google FTC engineering notebook requirements. You get a great resource that every team should read through because it has what they're looking for in engineering notebook.
Yeah.
And I think that reading that has really helped us to improve our notebook.
I think one thing that you touched upon was like there's a given. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you said was that you have certain people on your team work on specific sections of the notebook, right? So like one person would like you would
Yeah.
be
So
responsible for CAD, and someone else would be doing meeting notes, or someone else would be doing programming.
yeah.
Is
So
that how it's set up?
yeah. So it is a slight difference between being responsible for it and doing it though, because I'm responsible for CAD notebook getting done, but that doesn't mean I do all of CAD notebook. We try and have everyone or basically whoever
Oh,
does
I
the
see.
thing is
Yeah.
the person who should do notebook. But
Yeah.
it is at the end of the day my job to make sure notebook gets done. My job as design lead to make sure that CAD notebook gets done on time and everything is good and read through. And our mechanical lead is in charge of the engineering section, and Ben is in charge of the programming section. But all the other programmers and designers would help us with the notebook and write stuff. And
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That I'm like the amount of detail and information you have is very impressive. I don't think there are a lot of meeting notes that cover that much information. So I also like the little bar you have on the right. So ask, imagine, plan, all the like that little bar you have. I think that's really cool. Kind of shows the progression
Yeah.
of. Uh,
And what we actually use that for is we will go through our notebook once we printed it out, and we will circle all of the segments along that bar that are in that entry, so that you can see at a glance, oh, this is them improving a design, or this is them like figuring out what the design requirements are.
Yeah, our notebook is really like last year we tried to optimize like what we were showing to the judges and like trying to figure out like what they wanted to see and what made it easier for them. And so we ended up like I wish I could show this, but I don't think I can. We had a thing that was like using math to decide whether or not we should inverse stack or not. So we like took
oh
data,
yeah,
we wanted to
I
use.
saw that. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah,
You guys like
I
had a
think
whole
it's
spreadsheet.
in a spreadsheet
Yeah.
it's in a spreadsheet in the Google Drive if you want to pull it up, Ben.
Yeah.
In 1921.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
another thing that's really important is, yeah, go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
this is something that I think we found that the judges really wanted to see was like, do they use like math or like what's the reasoning behind their strategy? So I think by doing this, we help the judges see like we're really like thinking about what our strategy should be and using like some data, some reasoning to like back it up. So we made some like graphs, seeing how fast we get inverse stack compared to like the top stackers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that the judges really like to see is your reasoning, any like back backstory behind your decisions.
No, yeah, for sure.
And it's also very important to include failure in the notebook. Like that is the most important segment of the notebook is all the things that went wrong. Like we've been talking about our Diffie. We just had one of the bevel gears in our Diffie completely strip out.
Oh no.
Because it was from an old version where I had the gear module was lower than it should have been. So instead of just trying to pretend that never happened and make it look like we are great engineers and got it first try, we have some very gruesome photos in the notebook of the demolished module.
Yeah.
And showing everything that went wrong and how we're learning from that and how we're improving it and making changes.
Yeah.
So while it's not our proudest moment, it is very important that goes in the notebook because judges love to see everything that goes wrong and how you overcame challenges.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better. But
Yeah.
I love the strategy you're doing as well. All the graphs and kind of statistics that you have. I think that's very important, as you mentioned. So it's really nice to see that there as well.
Yeah.
So
and then there's also, I think it'll be even more important this year. They have the new like engineering section part that's supposed to be very short. I think it's probably because of teams like us who are writing. We wrote 500 pages of notebook in our document, and then had a bunch more of handwritten stuff. And like, there's no reasonable expectation that every one of those is going to get read, or even like a significant fraction of them is going to get read by a judge. So we wanted to select out the best of the best to like highlight for the judges and say, hey, these are some entries that you should look at if you want to see more about our team. But you also want to make sure that you have every entry good, because they will read through random ones just to make sure you aren't filling it with fluff.
I'm just reading through some stuff as well because it's very it's a very attractive notebook as well. My voice, but yeah, I think the portfolio guidelines. I have mixed feelings about the portfolio, so I really like that it's a new edition and it kind of gives teams a chance, like teams that don't do a full notebook, a chance to still like document and show what they've done throughout the season. I mean, at the same time, I feel like if you're restricting it to 15 pages, which is kind of really tough, I feel like maybe, some more pages, some more leeway might have been nicer. But again, that's a challenge on its own, and that's kind of what drives competition, motivation, all that. So
Yeah.
I think another question that would be helpful for rookies is, do you have any tips or tricks for, general design, general programming for the season, or kind of like how to go about that?
I can speak on.
Tip.
Okay, go ahead and talk about programming.
We've suffered a lot in the past trying to do too much from the get-go. Like we want to have a max auto in like November, and it's just like we can't do that. Like stuff comes up, things break. So I think like consistency, doing like one thing like consistently is better than trying to do everything like half the time.
Yeah.
So you can score like 15 points all the time, or you can score like 40 points 25% of the time.
Yeah,
so I think it's really important to focus on that.
I think one thing I noticed last season was that most of the teams that did really well, or like had really high scores, won their regional comps or whatever, like the consistent teams, they didn't have like autos that were like 4 stones, 3 stones, 5 stones. Like sometimes, I feel like most of the teams that did really well were consistent 2 or 3 stone autonomous programs versus a inconsistent 4 or 5. The blocks fell off the foundation, or they missed the last block because of drift and their odometry pause, all of that. So I think prioritizing consistency might be something that's a bit more important, or something to keep in mind for other teams depending on what you're trying to go for.
Yeah. It definitely depends on your goal. Like we at some of our lower competitions went for very inconsistent strategies in driver control, because we were aiming for high scores and we were not worried about losing the competition. But like if you're trying to get selected by an alliance, like having consistency and having them know that you're not going to get a 0 point auto is way better than having them know there's a 50% chance you get a certain auto, because those are elimination matches. And you need to be consistent in elimination.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. And then as far as design resources that we have, I'm actually working on a document of various like just design tips and things I've learned working in First,
awesome.
Mostly around 3D printing that I'm gonna for our freshmen that I'd be happy to share once it's finished.
That would be great.
I'll definitely post it in the Discord. But for the most part, just like use bearings for everything. Bearings are so nice. Don't have things be cantilevered. Have support on both sides. 3D printing is way more useful than most people realize. Like we have a 3D printed drivetrain pretty much at this point, and it has its problems. Like it's not metal, but it is so like being able to make new parts and change things is very versatile, and it just expands what you can do with CAD by miles and miles.
I think one thing we got a CNC this year for I think we got an Omeo X8 for our team this season. And since we're like 3 sister teams, it's technically for all 3 of us since our coach got it for us. But we're the only ones that use it for now. So like that gave us so much more flexibility because we don't need to have. And actually, this is the first season we're not just doing pure COTS. So this year we're doing a lot of 3D printing, a bit of CNC, and a bit of GoBuilda. So the drivetrains GoBuilda, and then everything else is pretty much CNC, 3D printed, custom, or like really wax rebuild stuff. But the flexibility you get with like those design choices is with being able to CNC or 3D print, it's really good, especially if it's in house.
3D printing, especially for prototyping, like if there's an investment for a tool that I think teams should make, it is to get a 3D printer. There is, in my opinion, there's no more useful machine than because you can make literally anything.
And a really good one.
I don't know. There's just a lot that I've learned over the years about how to design for 3D printing, and you can print any shape without support material if you are clever about how you assemble it.
I think like there's just a 200.
We have some.
Go ahead.
We have some very interesting parts that they come together in the end to work fine, but there's kind of a pain to print. But no, we it's very useful, and it's just the versatility and the ability to just like make something and then come in the next morning and put it on the robot with like very little effort on your part.
For sure.
And just rapid turnaround and seeing what works and what doesn't is very nice. And I think 3D printing is probably the most versatile tool teams have at their disposal.
Yep. I guess since we're running a bit low on time, the last question would be like, is there anything you want to share for this season in terms of what like how you're doing this season, or is it like you're still in development of some parts or some specific things? So how's it going for you this season, I guess?
Yeah, we're making do with our current circumstances. The benefit is we get to spend a lot of time in CAD, designing stuff, like just coming up, thinking of all the solutions to our problems. We're just working on our robot. It's a bit tough because like only 1 or 2 people can meet at a time. So you have to like really plan things out and make sure that like everyone's still on track. But yeah, we're using a lot of 3D printed stuff. Hopefully we'll be sharing a little more on our social media and stuff. And
that would can't wait for that. Okay. Anything else you guys want to add?
No.
Follow us on Instagram at Steelhead Robotics.
I can plug that in the description too. But thank you guys so much for watching.
Thanks for having us.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.